Hello, the unspoken ladies, welcome to the channel. Pay close attention to those who can disappear without making a sound, because silence is often the loudest decision a person can make. Here's something most people never realize. Psychologists have found that our brains crave closure. When someone suddenly disappears without explanation, the mind keeps searching for answers, replaying conversations and inventing possibilities. Ironically, silence often leaves a deeper impression than 1,000 words ever could. Now imagine someone who understands that and chooses silence anyway. That's where the Sigma female becomes one of the most misunderstood personalities you'll ever encounter. People assume she ghosts because she's angry, arrogant, or playing games. But what if every quiet exit has a reason no one notices? What if disappearing isn't emotional, but intentional? The truth is, Sigma females don't vanish because they can't communicate. They vanish because they've learned something most people never do. Not every door deserves a dramatic goodbye. Sometimes the strongest statement is simply leaving without an announcement. And let's be honest, some people treat a delayed reply like an international emergency. Miss one message, and suddenly they've launched a full-scale investigation worthy of a detective series. But that's exactly why today's discussion matters. Because behind every unanswered text, every quiet exit, and every unexplained disappearance lies a pattern almost nobody sees. These aren't the cliché reasons you've heard 100 times. They're deeper, more uncomfortable, and surprisingly revealing about human nature itself. So if you've ever wondered why Sigma females can seem close one day and completely unreachable the next, stay until the end. What you're about to hear may completely change the way you think about privacy, silence, and the people who choose both. Number 1, they disappear the moment they feel predictable. One of the biggest reasons a Sigma female quietly disappears has nothing to do with anger or rejection. It begins the moment she realizes people think they've completely figured her out. There's something surprisingly dangerous about becoming predictable. Once people believe they know exactly how you'll respond, how available you'll be, or what you'll tolerate, they often stop paying attention to who you really are. Instead, they start interacting with a version of you they've created in their own minds. A Sigma female notices this shift almost immediately. At first, the questions become assumptions. Then, the assumptions become expectations. Before long, people start speaking for her, finishing her sentences, deciding how she'll react, or believing she'll always be there because that's just who she is. That's usually when she leaves. Not because she enjoys mystery for the sake of mystery, but because she refuses to become a character in someone else's story. She knows that once people stop discovering you, they often stop respecting your complexity. They begin treating you like a routine instead of a person. She would rather surprise people with her absence than bore them with constant availability. What makes this even more interesting is that she rarely announces her decision. There are no dramatic speeches, no emotional countdown, and no public declaration that she's pulling away. She simply becomes harder to find. Her replies grow less frequent. Her presence becomes quieter. Then, one day, people realize they haven't heard from her in weeks. That's when the questions begin. Most assume something must have happened. The truth is, something did happen. The relationship quietly crossed an invisible line, from genuine curiosity to comfortable certainty. Number 2, they notice invisible social contracts. Most people don't realize how many invisible agreements exist in everyday relationships. Nobody writes them down, nobody talks about them, yet they're everywhere. Reply within a certain time. Always explain where you've been. Be available whenever someone wants to talk. Say yes often enough so no one feels ignored. The strange part is that these expectations quietly grow without anyone asking if they were ever accepted. A Sigma female notices these invisible social contracts almost immediately. She can tell when a casual conversation slowly turns into an obligation. A simple, "How are you?" becomes an expectation that she must always respond. One favor quietly turns into another, until people begin acting as though they have permanent access to her time and attention. She doesn't see this as kindness anymore. She sees it as silent pressure. That's why she often disappears without making an announcement. She's not trying to punish anyone. She's refusing to sign an agreement she never agreed to in the first place. Many people mistake constant availability for loyalty. A Sigma female doesn't. She believes that genuine relationships don't demand proof every single day. If someone needs endless reassurance just because she isn't always present, she starts questioning whether the connection is based on respect or dependence. This is where people misunderstand her the most. They think she's being distant when she's actually protecting something far more valuable: her freedom to choose when and how she connects with others. She doesn't believe every message deserves an immediate reply. She doesn't think saying no requires a long explanation, and she certainly doesn't believe that friendship should feel like a job with unwritten rules and endless obligations. The moment she realizes people expect access instead of appreciating connection, she quietly steps back. To some, that silence feels cold. To her, it's honesty. She would rather disappoint someone by disappearing than slowly lose herself by living according to expectations she never accepted. That's why her privacy isn't simply about being alone. It's about deciding that her time, energy, and attention belong to her first, and only then can they be shared with people who respect that choice. Number 3. They test silence more than words. Most people think trust is built through long conversations, heartfelt promises, or constant communication. A Sigma female sees it differently. She believes words are easy. Almost anyone can say the right thing when they want to be liked. The real test begins when the conversation suddenly goes quiet. Silence has a strange way of exposing people. The moment she becomes less available, she starts seeing sides of others that never appeared before. Some people respect the distance and simply wait until she reaches out again. Others immediately become impatient, demanding explanations or acting as though they've been personally offended. A few will even invent stories about why she's gone, turning their assumptions into facts. She pays attention to all of it. To her, silence isn't empty, it's information. She learns who values her as a person and who only values the access they had to her. There's a huge difference. Someone who genuinely cares doesn't panic every time communication slows down. They understand that people have lives, responsibilities, and moments when they simply want to be alone. But those who feel entitled to constant attention often reveal themselves very quickly. They push harder, guilt-trip her, send repeated messages, or make her feel as though she owes them an explanation simply for being quiet. That reaction tells her everything she needs to know. A Sigma female doesn't create these moments to manipulate anyone. She isn't playing emotional games or setting traps. She's simply allowing people to reveal who they naturally become when they don't get immediate access to her time. The beauty of silence is that it removes performance. Without endless conversations to hide behind, people's true character starts showing through their actions instead of their words. This is why she trusts behavior far more than promises. Anyone can claim they're patient, understanding, and respectful. Silence quietly asks them to prove it. And that's exactly why she never fears going quiet. She knows that every unanswered moment becomes a mirror, reflecting the people who can respect her boundaries and exposing those who only valued her when she was always within reach. Number 4. They leave before their identity gets rewritten. One of the quietest things a Sigma female protects is her identity. Not the version people see on the surface, but the person she knows herself to be. She has learned that some people don't just get to know you, they slowly begin rewriting who you are in their minds. It starts with small labels. She's shy. She's always available. She's the strong one. She'll never leave. At first, these statements sound harmless, but over time, they become boxes. Once people place her inside one, they stop paying attention to the parts of her that don't fit. They expect her to act the same, think the same, and make the same choices, even when she's growing into someone completely different. A Sigma female finds that suffocating. She refuses to spend her life defending herself against assumptions that were never true to begin with. She doesn't want to constantly explain, "That's not who I am anymore," or "You never really understood me." Instead of arguing with someone else's version of her, she quietly removes herself from the situation. She knows something many people overlook. Once a false image settles into someone's mind, changing it is incredibly difficult. People often prefer the version that's convenient for them rather than the truth. That's why she doesn't waste energy trying to convince everyone they've misunderstood her. She lets them keep their story while she continues writing her own. Some call this cold. Others think she's impossible to understand. But the reality is much simpler. She refuses to become trapped inside expectations created by people who stopped seeing her clearly. Growth requires room to change, to surprise yourself, and sometimes to become almost unrecognizable from the person you were a year ago. A Sigma female protects that freedom fiercely. If staying in someone's life means constantly living up to an outdated version of herself, she'll choose distance every time. She would rather be misunderstood from afar than slowly lose herself trying to fit a description someone else wrote. Her silence isn't an escape from people. It's a refusal to let anyone else hold the pen that writes her identity. Number 5. They guard their future self. A Sigma female doesn't just think about who she is today, she's constantly thinking about the person she's becoming. Every decision, every commitment, and every relationship has the power to shape that future. That's why she can seem unpredictable to people who only focus on the present. She understands something that many people overlook. Every yes quietly creates another expectation. Agree to answer every late-night call, and people expect you'll always be available. Be the one who solves everyone's problems, and soon they'll assume you'll never stop. Share every detail of your life, and suddenly privacy feels like a betrayal. She sees these patterns before most people do. That's why she sometimes disappears, before those expectations have the chance to grow roots. It's not because she doesn't care. It's because she's protecting the freedom of the woman she hasn't become yet. She knows that the choices she makes today can quietly trap the person she'll be tomorrow. Many people stay in situations simply because they've always been there. They keep friendships out of guilt, continue habits they've outgrown, or carry responsibilities that no longer fit their lives. A Sigma female questions all of it. She refuses to let yesterday's decisions control tomorrow's possibilities. Some people interpret this as inconsistency. They wonder why she suddenly pulls away from people, routines, or conversations that once seemed important. What they don't see is that she's constantly making room for growth. She doesn't believe loyalty means staying the same forever. She gives herself permission to evolve, even if that disappoints others. This is why ghosting, in her eyes, isn't always about ending a relationship. Sometimes it's about ending a version of herself that no longer feels true. She won't cling to an identity, a habit, or a connection simply because it has history behind it. Her future matters too much for that. Number 6. They can detect emotional consumption. A Sigma female pays attention to something that most people completely miss. She doesn't just listen to what people say, she notices what they constantly take. Some people don't want a relationship. They want unlimited access. They want someone to absorb every frustration, calm every fear, celebrate every success, and be available whenever life becomes difficult. Without realizing it, they begin treating another person's emotional energy like an endless resource. A Sigma female notices this long before anyone else does. At first, the conversations seem normal. Then a pattern begins to appear. Every call is about someone else's problems. Every message carries another emotional burden. Every interaction leaves her feeling as though she's been carrying a weight that never belonged to her. What makes it worse is that emotional consumption often disguises itself as closeness. The more someone unloads on her, the more they claim they're comfortable with her. But comfort isn't the same as consideration. A healthy connection allows both people to breathe. An unhealthy one quietly expects one person to keep giving while the other keeps taking. She refuses to become someone's emotional storage room. That doesn't mean she's heartless. In fact, she's often incredibly understanding. She'll listen, encourage, and support the people she genuinely cares about. But she also knows the difference between helping someone through a difficult season and becoming responsible for their emotional survival. The moment she realizes every conversation revolves around rescuing someone else's peace while slowly losing her own, she begins to step back. She rarely argues about it. She doesn't accuse people of using her. She simply creates distance. Some people are shocked when she disappears because they never noticed how one-sided the relationship had become. They believed they were sharing. She quietly realized she was carrying. That's the difference. Number 7. They refuse to become someone's daily habit. One of the most misunderstood things about a Sigma female is that she doesn't want to become a routine in someone else's life. While many people see constant communication as proof of a strong connection, she knows that familiarity can quietly turn into entitlement. It happens more often than people realize. At first, someone appreciates hearing from her. Then they begin expecting it. A daily conversation becomes a requirement instead of a choice. If she doesn't send a message one day, questions start appearing. Where have you been? Why didn't you reply? Is something wrong? What was once freely given slowly becomes something people feel they deserve. A Sigma female notices that shift immediately. She wants to be valued, not scheduled. There's a huge difference between someone enjoying your presence and someone depending on your presence just to feel normal. The second one creates pressure, and pressure slowly removes the freedom that made the relationship enjoyable in the first place. She believes the healthiest relationships can survive space. If a connection begins falling apart simply because she isn't available every single day, she starts wondering whether the bond was ever as strong as it seemed. Real respect doesn't disappear the moment communication slows down. This is one reason she quietly pulls away before habits become expectations. She doesn't want anyone arranging their emotional life around her presence. She doesn't want to feel responsible for another person's happiness simply because she's always been there before. Some people interpret her silence as losing interest. In reality, she's protecting the relationship from becoming something unhealthy. She wants every conversation to happen because both people genuinely want it, not because routine demands it. She would rather have one meaningful conversation after a week of silence than force 7 empty conversations just to keep a streak alive. Number 8. They listen for curiosity, not compliments. A Sigma female is rarely impressed by compliments alone. She's heard the flattering words before. People tell her she's beautiful, smart, mysterious, independent, or different. While those words may sound nice, she knows compliments are often the easiest part of a conversation. They can be sincere, but they can also be a shortcut to gaining someone's attention. What truly catches her attention is curiosity. She notices the people who ask thoughtful questions instead of making quick assumptions, the ones who genuinely want to understand how she thinks what shapes her decisions, or what she values. Those conversations feel real because they aren't built on appearances, they're built on discovery. That's a rare quality. Many people are more interested in talking than listening. They enjoy telling others what they think, giving advice that wasn't asked for, or making confident guesses about someone's personality after only a few conversations. A Sigma female quietly steps back when she realizes someone has stopped being curious and started acting like an expert on her life. She finds that dangerous. The moment someone believes they already know everything about her, they stop paying attention. They stop asking questions. They stop noticing the changes happening beneath the surface. Instead, they interact with their own assumptions, not the real person standing in front of them. She has no interest in relationships built on assumptions. That's why praise alone doesn't keep her around. She would rather spend time with someone who asks one meaningful question than someone who gives 10 empty compliments. Curiosity shows humility. It admits there's still more to learn. Compliments, on the other hand, can sometimes become a way of closing the conversation instead of opening it. When genuine curiosity disappears, she often does too, not because she craves attention, but because she values being understood more than being admired. She knows admiration can fade the moment expectations change, but curiosity keeps a relationship alive because it leaves room for growth. Number 9, they notice who becomes uncomfortable when they need nothing. One of the most revealing things a Sigma female watches for is how people react when she doesn't need anything from them. It sounds simple, but it exposes more about a person's character than long conversations ever could. Many relationships are built on an unspoken exchange. One person gives advice, attention, money, comfort, or approval, while the other receives it. Over time, that exchange can become part of someone's identity. They feel important because they're needed. A Sigma female quietly removes that equation. She doesn't constantly ask for favors. She doesn't seek approval before making decisions. She doesn't need someone to solve every problem or rescue her from every difficult moment. She handles most things on her own, not because she's trying to prove anything, but because that's simply how she lives. Surprisingly, this makes some people uncomfortable. When they can't play the hero, the expert, or the rescuer, they begin to wonder where they fit. Some start offering advice that wasn't requested. Others create problems just so they can fix them. A few even become distant because they no longer feel important. She notices every bit of it. The people who truly respect her don't feel threatened by her independence. They don't need her to rely on them in order to feel valued. They enjoy her company because of who she is, not because of what she needs from them. That difference matters. A Sigma female isn't looking for someone to complete her life. She's looking for people who can walk beside her without trying to take control of the journey. She believes the strongest relationships are built on mutual respect, not quiet dependence. That's why she pays close attention to those subtle reactions. When someone becomes uneasy simply because she stands on her own, it tells her the relationship may have been built more on being needed than on being appreciated. And appreciation always lasts longer than usefulness. So if she quietly steps away, it isn't because she thinks she doesn't need people. It's because she refuses to stay in relationships where her value depends on acting helpless. She would rather be respected for who she is than loved only for the role someone else expected her to play. Number 10. They don't confuse access with intimacy. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that constant access automatically creates a deep connection. A Sigma female knows that's simply not true. Someone can text you every morning, call you every night, know your favorite food, your daily routine, and even your birthday, yet still have no real understanding of who you are. Access and intimacy are not the same thing. Many people confuse frequency with closeness. They think that because they hear from someone every day, they've earned a place in that person's inner world. But a Sigma female sees how misleading that can be. She has met people who knew every detail of her schedule, but never understood her values. They knew where she was, but not what she stood for. To her, that's not intimacy. That's familiarity. Real intimacy isn't built by counting conversations or measuring response times. It's built through trust, respect, patience, and the willingness to understand someone without trying to control them. Those things cannot be rushed, and they certainly can't be forced. This is why she sometimes pulls away. When someone starts acting as though constant communication gives them unlimited access to her thoughts, emotions, or decisions, she quietly creates distance. She believes that just because someone can reach her doesn't mean they're entitled to every part of her life. She keeps certain parts of herself private on purpose. Not because she's hiding secrets, but because she understands that some things lose their value when they're shared too quickly or too easily. She doesn't hand out trust simply because time has passed. She lets people earn it through consistency, respect, and genuine understanding. The people who stay in her life are the ones who never mistake availability for closeness. They know that real connection isn't measured by how often they speak, but by how deeply they understand each other. That's why a Sigma female can disappear without feeling guilty. If someone only valued having access to her instead of truly knowing her, then the relationship was never as deep as it appeared. She would rather have a few people who understand her silence than a crowd that only notices when she's online. Number 11. They fear becoming a performance. A Sigma female is careful about one thing that many people never even notice. She refuses to let her life become a performance for other people's expectations. It rarely happens all at once. It starts with something small. People compliment her for always being calm, so they expect her never to get frustrated. They admire her independence, so they assume she never needs support. They praise her strength, and suddenly she's no longer allowed to have a difficult day without disappointing someone. Before long, she realizes she's no longer being herself. She's maintaining an image. That's where the problem begins. She understands that once people become attached to a certain version of you, they often resist your growth. If you've always been the quiet one, they expect you to stay quiet. If you've always been dependable, they expect endless availability. If you've always been private, they become suspicious the moment you decide to open up, or they expect you to remain mysterious forever. It becomes exhausting. She doesn't want to wake up every day wondering whether she's living her own life or simply meeting other people's expectations. She refuses to smile because it's expected, stay silent because it's comfortable for others, or keep playing a role that no longer fits the person she's becoming. So she quietly steps away. Not because she hates people, but because distance gives her something incredibly valuable: the freedom to stop performing. Away from constant opinions and expectations, she can change her mind, discover new interests, make mistakes, and grow without feeling like she's breaking a character everyone else has memorized. That's something very few people understand. Many spend years protecting an image they no longer recognize, afraid of disappointing those who only know the old version of them. A Sigma female chooses something different. She'd rather disappoint expectations than betray herself. If disappearing is the only way to escape becoming a role instead of a real person, she'll disappear without hesitation. To her, authenticity is worth more than approval. She doesn't want to be admired for playing a part. She wants the freedom to live honestly, even if that means confusing people who expected her to stay exactly the same forever. That's a price she's willing to pay every single time. Number 12. They believe privacy is a form of power. To a Sigma female, privacy isn't a wall built out of fear. It's a quiet form of strength. In a world where people feel pressured to share every thought, every achievement, every setback, and every opinion, she chooses something different. She understands that not everything valuable needs an audience. What she keeps to herself often becomes her greatest advantage. She has learned that the more people know, the more they tend to form opinions, offer unwanted advice, or create expectations. Some will celebrate your success, while others will quietly compete with it. Some will support your dreams, while others will question them before they've even had a chance to grow. She would rather protect her plans than defend them. That's why people are often surprised by her. One day she's quiet, and the next she's accomplished something no one even knew she was working toward. While others were talking about their next move, she was already making it. She doesn't mistake visibility for value. Many people believe they must constantly prove they're doing well. They post updates, seek validation, and measure their progress by how much attention it receives. A Sigma female measures success differently. If her life is moving forward, she doesn't need applause to confirm it. Her silence is never empty. It's productive. Privacy also protects her peace. The fewer opinions she invites into every decision, the clearer her own voice becomes. She isn't distracted by outside expectations or pressured to live according to someone else's timeline. She makes choices because they fit her life, not because they impress other people. This is one reason she can disappear without warning. She isn't trying to seem mysterious. She's simply unwilling to let constant exposure drain her energy or influence her direction. To many people, power looks loud. It demands attention and announces every victory. A Sigma female sees power differently. Real power is having the confidence to build a meaningful life without needing everyone to witness it. It's knowing that your worth doesn't increase because more people are watching. Sometimes the strongest move is the one nobody sees until it's already changed everything. In the end, the biggest mistake people make is assuming that a Sigma female disappears because she doesn't care. More often than not, the opposite is true. She cares deeply about where her time goes, who has access to her life, and how she protects the parts of herself that the world doesn't need to see. Her silence isn't always rejection, it isn't always anger, and it certainly isn't always a game. Sometimes it's wisdom, sometimes it's self-respect, sometimes it's the only way to protect her peace in a world that constantly demands more than it's willing to give. The truth is, privacy isn't about shutting people out, it's about choosing carefully who gets invited in. And in an age where everyone is encouraged to share everything, those who know when to stay silent often hold the greatest advantage. Whether you agree with the Sigma female mindset or not, there's something valuable we can all learn from it. Not every message needs an immediate reply, not every relationship deserves unlimited access, and not every chapter of your life has to be lived in front of an audience. If this video gave you a new perspective, let us know in the comments. Which point surprised you the most? And have you ever quietly stepped away from people to protect your own peace? We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our future videos. We bring you thought-provoking insights into human behavior, psychology, and the Sigma mindset that challenge the usual way of thinking. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make is the one you never have to say out loud. Until next time, take care and stay true to yourself.